Well, we are breaking in with some news coming out of Iran. I'm Rashad Salamat. The U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, says it's launched a new round of strikes on the south of the country. Iranian state television saying explosions have been reported in 2 cities along the coast. Iran's press TV says Bushehr and Asuluya have been hit. It's unclear what was targeted and if there have been any casualties there as well. U.S. CENTCOM saying its forces have launched strikes against Iran in response to an attack on a Cyprus-flagged container ship in the Strait. Now, in a statement, CENTCOM said this: a civilian crew member is missing and the vessel is unable to continue the journey due to an onboard fire and significant engine room damage. Iran was provided yet another opportunity to demonstrate adherence to the Memorandum of Understanding after being held accountable for earlier attacks on commercial vessels, but has again failed. In response, the U.S. is imposing a heavy cost by continuing to degrade Iran's ability to attack civilian mariners and commercial ships freely transiting the Strait. The strikes have been carried out at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief. Now, these attacks do come after the IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, said the Strait of Hormuz has been temporarily closed until further notice. The IRGC said a commercial vessel was struck for trying to transit the shipping lane along what Tehran says is an unapproved route. Let's get over to the Iranian capital, Tehran. Tawhid Asadi joins us from there. What more can you tell us here, Tawhid?
Well, according to the statements and the announcements that we have from the naval forces of IRGC, they came out to confirm the attack to one of the vessels, which, according to the statement, tried to approach the Strait of Hormuz within a different route that was not approved by the Iranians. And then after denying these warnings coming from the Iranian side, it was shot, it was fired upon, according to IRGC. And this is just one vessel, even though we have some other reports about potentiality for other vessels being targeted, not confirmed indeed. Also, we've got another statement from the Revolutionary Guards talking about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz after this recent rounds of developments, specifically what they call is the insecurity caused by illegal foreign intervention. The strait, according to them, is now closed until further notice and until the end of the U.S. intervention. Meanwhile, they're saying that if the enemy, quote unquote, commits a mistake by responding, there are going to be more repercussions if they try to attack, and if they conduct any act of aggression against the Iranian side, it will be responded strongly, and there will be more bases of the Americans in the region being targeted as a consequence if that happens. Meanwhile, they are talking about consequences which fall, according to them, upon the United States, Israel, and of course they are saying the third countries which are providing territories for these attacks to be conducted. And that is in line with other statements that we have been hearing from the Iranian side. They said since the escalation, they were saying that there are going to be repercussions. Iran is going to take firm, steadfast action to safeguard their national interest, their national security, and there are going to be tough repercussions. And on the other hand, we know that over the past few days, in addition to this escalated situation, a lot of diplomatic engagement, a lot of diplomatic effort was underway, indeed, mediated by different countries, including Pakistanis, including Qataris. But all in all, what we hear from Iranian side, specifically from a Ministry of Foreign Affairs official coming out to tell Al Jazeera that the ball is right now in the court of the United States. And that brings us to the argument that Iranians are raising about the breach of the Memorandum of Understanding by the Americans after their quote-unquote intervention at the Strait of Hormuz, regarding which Iran is putting emphasis from time to time that the control and authority over the Strait of Hormuz is going to be for the Iranian side, coordinated with the Omani side. Iranian officials were in Oman, according to them, to have consultations regarding the future of the Strait of Hormuz, how it's going to be controlled. But all in all, we know that we are dealing with a very fragile and brittle and complicated situation at the Strait of Hormuz, which is also interrelated to other controversial issues between the United States and Iran.
Tawhid, we are getting also further reports right now from the Iranian state media, or semi-state media, if you will. In addition to those attacks taking place at Asilea and Bushehr, we've apparently had Sirik and Bandar Abbas also under attack, with explosions taking place there. What more can you tell us?
This is not for the first time. Over the past 3-4 nights, we have been witnessing a sort of expanded scope of the areas being targeted, some of them for the very first time after the announcement of the Memorandum of Understanding. For instance, in the southeastern parts of the country, a very important port port indeed called Chabahar was targeted. Meanwhile, we know that in the islands of Qeshm and Abu Musa over the past few days, we have been hearing sounds of explosion, and also in the Sirik and Jask. These are very much important locations geostrategically speaking. Qeshm is the largest island in the vicinity of the Strait of Hormuz. Jask and Sirik are indeed very important because they oversee the strait, and Iran is using them to actually practice its control and authority over the strait. And tonight we also got reports about sounds of explosion. Press TV said that Bushehr and Asilea witnessed explosion sounds, and also other unconfirmed reports now are coming about sounds of explosions being heard in the southern coast of the country, which is another sign of escalation while diplomacy is underway. However, these indications put the peace, put the long-lasting solution further away from the rich, seeing this complicated situation. Iran, in that regard, is saying that, as I told you earlier, it's ready to respond. It's ready for a crushing response, according to the joint military headquarters of Khatamul Anbiya. But we have to keep in mind that in this situation, uncertainty is the name of the game, and we are dealing with a very fragile, breakable situation, which runs the risk of further escalation on the horizon.
Tawhid, what is at the moment really going on with the IRGC? I mean, earlier this week, it was said that it was errant members of the IRGC who'd been responsible for some of these attacks on tankers in the Strait. What more do you know about this?
It goes without saying that they're trying to depict a sort of consensus, and the message that we hear not only from IRGC but also from the entirety of the political establishment in Iran is a two-sided one. While they're saying that fingers are on the trigger, they're ready to respond, they are ready for further confrontational scenarios down the road, and they're saying that next time, if there is an escalation that might be even beyond the region, and they're saying that there is full preparation, logistically speaking, for such scenarios. On the other hand, we also hear from the political establishment, diplomatically speaking, a message that it is ready for engagement, it's ready for negotiation, it's ready for sitting down and talking. However, the entirety of the atmosphere for talks is indeed engulfed by a cloud of mistrust, a sort of additional complexity, additional uncertainty. And after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed over the past few nights, we were witnessing new rounds of escalation, new rounds of attacks on the Iranian territories, which is going to be putting a certain amount of impact on the trajectory, on the pathway for diplomacy to resolve all these complicated issues. IRGC is one key factor here. There's no small spot of hesitation, but also we have to keep in mind that the Supreme National Security Council of the country approved the negotiations. So there was a sort of, I would say, slim amount of hope for all these controversies, all these complexities to be resolved within the trajectory of diplomacy after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed. But what we hear from, again, this same political establishment, militarily and politically speaking, is that Iran is saying from time to time that these recent courses of action are being interpreted, as a matter of fact, as a breach of agreement. Not only that, but also they're saying that this is not the only case of the breach of agreement. They are referring to the continued Israeli strikes on the Lebanese territories, and that was one of the key concerns when Iran started to get engaged in the trajectory of talks. And also they are referring to the recent decision by the United States Department of Treasury to reimpose sanctions on Iranian oil exports. And again, that is another important determinant in this complicated situation, because Iranians were hopeful that in case they start negotiations, they can pave the way for these sanctions to be removed, to have better economic situation as a result. But right now, what they see is, in a sense, the continuation of the blockade, partially speaking, that hinders their oil exports, and that is putting a huge amount of pressure not only on the Iranian economy but also on their presence when it comes to the table of negotiations.
Tawhid, thank you very much indeed. Tawhid Asadi, they're joining us from Tehran. Now, the escalation between the United States and Iran this week put the ceasefire and the memorandum of understanding signed last month at risk. Now, this is how events unfolded.